All right, folks, welcome back. Another What's Your Story Nerdporeal is back in the house. It's so great to see you, man. And let's jump right into the fact you've been working out, man. You've been doing the thing. You've been doing the fitness. I'm very proud of you, man.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's I've been you make a lot of friends here on YouTube, and some of them, like my one friend Pips, one of the White Cloaks, he's a Marine and he's currently deployed, and he basically shares on Discord what he's been doing fitness wise, and I've been reading his stuff, and I'm just like, he's not that much younger than me, so I was just like, I should get back to it and actually have some goals. And one goal I have is to do a pull-up. I've never been able to do a pull-up. I was always a bigger kid growing up. Like, I was always kind of stocky. I mean, I was tall, but I was also stocky, and we did something about people, millennial and fitness. Like, it wasn't like required. We weren't required to be fit. Like, I know, like, if you ever seen old videos, especially of boomers and older boomers, and like as early as 1960, 61, like the young men back then were like doing like athletic what do you call it, calisthenic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were all like, they already mastered their body when they were teenagers. And when I was growing up, I had nothing like that. They're doing pull-ups, they're holding themselves on the bars, they're doing dips like it's nothing. And it's just like we were never really required to be fit like that. And then when it came to doing a mile, I couldn't even do a mile because I'm an asthmatic. I still have the asthma. And just this morning I went, I wanted to go to the gym, but I was lazy. So I ended up going for a walk. I walked a mile, and I tried to do a walk and then a run shift and all that just to get myself back into it. And I think what you eat affects like how your lungs operate, how you breathe, how your muscles feel, how your bones feel, and all that. And so, I mean, I've been trying to eat less sugar as a result of that, and I've been listening to more podcasts talking about it. And a lot of people are saying they do the meat diet, the meat only diet, and I might consider doing it. I've been making like chicken and steak for lunch and everything, but the thing is, I still incorporate carbs and some sugar. Like, I had some Oreos earlier this week, and it was so good with some milk, but it's just you don't feel good after doing it, and especially when you're trying to exercise.
You find that most of those guys though are like a six days of carnivore kind of guy, and then the keto thing is a little tricky because anything you have those Oreos one time, now that could bump you away from being ketosis. But I think if you just try to strive to eat cleaner, because my wife is way more hardcore than I am, but that's definitely an avenue we are. And it's always about trying to replace things for us. Like, we found some success, and I have like a rabid allergy to a ton of different things. So even a rash to like a certain type of deodorant can give me a rash. So things like that. So she's found certain type of clean products, and we have to stock up on those. But I couldn't agree more, man. I think that your health and staying active, I was kind of like the nerdy kid in that with phys ed and doing but there was a lot of calisthenics and a lot of that type of physical education pretty much all through my high school. And I was too skinny. I didn't gain enough mass, even if I would try to do. We had like weightlifting was part of physical education. I just couldn't gain enough weight to get over the hurdle with my self-esteem. So I was just still like the smaller kid. I didn't really gain enough weight until I was a little bit older. And I couldn't agree more though that has been lost. I'd have to ask my kids, because I don't think we've really talked a lot about what was structured phys ed in high school or not. I don't know. I don't remember.
I'm not even sure either. It's been so long since I've been in school. I do remember we did have to do like, running, we do jumping jacks and, stretches. I've been trying to actually get myself stretching. I usually do it when I'm taking a shower. Like, if I have to wash my feet, I instead of bending down or lifting my feet up, I try to, bend down and stretch my, stretch my hamstrings while I'm doing it. So, and I try to do it as long as possible. And it's really good exercise. Like, you feel like it works out your core, and you maybe because you're up kind of upside down, all the blood's going to your head. It feels different and all that. So, but yeah, I'm just trying to improve my look, like my facial features is like the last thing that cuts when it comes to fat and all that. So I don't know. I was able to I was able to do it in college. I had a buddy, and that's how I was able to eventually run a mile, because he just kept saying, "Hey, let's go to the gym." And we went to the gym every day, and we went on the track, and I started slowly, and I'm kind of back at where I was when I first started on the track and all that. Like I'll get through a quarter of a mile, and then I'm huffing and puffing, and I'm struggling to breathe, and I'm feeling my lungs feel like all the inflammation is coming to a head, to come to a head and all that. So yeah. And then the same with, I'm just trying to be patient with myself. And like I used to be a strong kid. Like I used to be able, like people, even though I was bullied, like verbally, I was never bullied physically. So if you tried to bully me physically, I mean, I'm not the tallest guy, I'm average height. But when I was growing up, I was one of the taller people. I was sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You weren't physically bullied. You dealt with people picking on you, but not physically.
Yeah, and so I was stronger than a lot of people because of that, and because of that, it kind of got to my head. And even now, I kind of struggle with that, and I lift heavier weights than I should. And the thing when you're exercising, especially if you're starting over after a while, is you got to be patient with yourself, and you have to lift. You have to maintain proper form. That's the most important thing to do. So, and you gotta brush aside the ego. You gotta brush aside the ego and everything, and so that you don't get injured. Because I already hurt myself. Like when I try to do a hammer curl now with this arm, it hurts because I decided to lift more weight than I was able to, and everything. So that's the thing. You could hurt yourself if you let your ego get a hold of you. So
yeah, I'm with you there. And Mrs. Pops has me doing farm work early in the morning and late at night, so I get my daily dose of physical activity and sunlight every single day. And it is tempting sometimes to try to lift and move things that you shouldn't do, just
yeah,
out of sheer convenience and ego. Oh, I don't need to get that. I don't need to get the ladder. I can reach this and I can carry that. And you're like,
I
oh,
do like if you go, this is something I do. And what's funny is I thought I was the only one that did this, but apparently because of social media, I learned that every dude does this. Whenever there's groceries, I only want to make one trip. So I grab every single grocery. So I can only have one single, run, or one single,
yeah, you want to pick one
trip.
trip.
One trip. And I didn't realize it, but every dude does that. I didn't realize it. I don't know what it is. Maybe we just don't want to waste time going back and forth carrying groceries or something. But yeah, that's a kind of contributed to me doing farmers walks. And that's the other thing, doing farmers walks where you're just holding a weight in both hands, and you're basically trying to improve your grip strength. That's something that I've been trying to do, because part of doing a pull up and holding yourself on the bars, you have to be able to hold your own weight and everything. And you have to, in order to do that, you have to have a solid grip strength. So I kind of lost. I was working out and used that picture you showed, but then I stopped for like a few months. So I'm trying to regain those gains and that grip strength that I acquired and everything. So it's tough trying to get up early, because I mean, I have to travel several miles to work. I have to work in Aurora, which is where, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Wayne's World, but that's where I'm working. I'm working where Wayne's World took place, and that's basically the western outskirts of Chicagoland. So that takes me about a good 45 minutes to an hour to get there every day. And then when there's rush hour coming back home, it takes me about an hour and a half. So, and there's not a whole lot of gyms out there. So the gyms are by me, but the thing is, the gym that I'm going to right now is always filled with people. It's like going to the gym is not even like, it's not a unique thing about a person. Everybody goes now. Everybody wants to look, look max themselves, which is basically, look like you're, trying to improve how you look, how your face looks and all. That's what they say online and all that. So I'm kind of trying to do the same thing.
Well, I tell you, someone that's a little bit older than you, man, it's all about taking care of your physical health, trying to be better, trying to foresee that problem. What problems could you have from being asthmatic and letting it get more problematic? What problems would you have by carrying too much excess weight? What will that do to your knees?
Yes.
What will that do to your ankles? And I say that, I tell you what, I'm so glad that we ended up having problems, my wife and I both, in our 40s, so it kind of raised awareness of, oh wait, crap, her shoulder gave out. Her shoulder totally got ruined. It had to have a repair way earlier than she should have had, and
Yeah.
I had a knee problem. Unfortunately, I've dodged surgery with it, but I've had it looked at 2 or 3 times now, where I'm at on that to raise awareness to how active I need to be and shed some weight appropriately. But I will tell you that the clean thing, there's a lot to that, especially when you kind of go down that rabbit hole of some of the bro science guys, of what they tell you, and you get into, the Hubermans and get into Chris Williamson land, and you start getting into these guys that are doing these shows, and you're like, oh man, then you're down that rabbit hole, and then you get into the documentaries and you get into the history of, like everything else, it won't surprise you, right, Nerdporeal, that money played such a big part in what the food pyramid was, and what's on labels and what's not on labels.
Yep.
It's it is
yeah, there's a channel I was listening to last Sunday, Peak Prosperity, and he had on Dr. Eric Berg, and Dr. Eric Berg basically talks about like all the stuff that they have on like the stuff that goes through the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. It's bull. It's all bull. Like, especially when you see something like natural flavors and the ingredients, you gotta look at the ingredients and everything. So one thing that I'm trying to do is, and this is something that he suggested, is that when you go to the grocery store, you got to stay away from the center part of the grocery store. You got to go stay on the outskirts where they have the meat, where they have the produce, where they have the fresher stuff. You don't want to go into the center part of the store where there's all the oils and the carbs and the sugars and the juices.
You're microwaving it. Something's not good.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. If you're microwaving it, yeah, I stay away from TV dinners. Heck, I haven't had frozen pizza in years. I mean,
me neither.
I every now and then we will get frozen pierogies because my ancestry is Polish. We've had my parents used to go to the Polish place every weekend, almost every Saturday when I was growing up. Even though like my we don't speak Polish. My grandmother, who I never met, she passed away before I was born. She spoke Polish on my dad's side, but I've been kind of completely disconnected from the Polish part. The only thing I know is probably the food, and because I have a lot of Polish neighbors and there's a lot of Polish people I went to school with. I know some of like the curse I know some of the curse words and all that, but yeah. But yeah, that's
I wanted to touch on what you said, because we actually just had this happen like 2 days ago, and I was like, I literally stopped me in my tracks. My wife was talking to my mother-in-law because she was reading an article about this ingredient, and it was citric acid, but they weren't using natural citric acid. They were manufacturing it from the mold Aspergillium. I walk in the room when she's explaining that, and I'm like, wait, I'm dramatically allergic to Aspergillium. It's like a green mold, and they use that to
manufacture
citric acid from it. And I'm like, okay, hold on. So Aspergillium was so bad. So whenever you do like a skin test for your allergies, they do these little needles on you or whatever. Aspergillium was so bad, it like bled over the whole area. I had to have that whole section redone. That's how. So I'm like, wait, so if I'm having orange juice that I think is natural, but it's being made from Aspergillium, I'm like, so we've been on that. My wife is way down this rabbit hole. She's like bemoaning. I'll come in and she'll be having a bad mood, and because of the type of thing that she gets here has now been bought by Hershey, or it's been bought by Kellogg's, and all they do is change the ingredients. And you'll see it too if she watches labels. I forget what mayonnaise. She was just looking at mayonnaise, and I forget what it was, but it was, I'll just say soy. I don't know what ingredient it was. It was like the 5th ingredient, and now it's the number 1 ingredient. And I'm like, oh, come on, guys. We can't even keep you can't even keep stuff in the same lane with the same company. So it's kind of a part-time job taking care of yourself, my friend.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing. Condiments are in the center of the store too, and condiments are a big factor in weight gain, especially for me. I like whenever I have this Italian sub, I'd love to, apply some mayonnaise. It just makes it good and everything. But the thing is, like, some mayos, like if you buy like the Kraft kind or the big brand kinds, they have sugar in it. Even the Hellmann's kind has it.
Tons of sugar.
We have the one that we buy that doesn't have nearly as many ingredients, but still has natural flavors, is Duke's mayo. And
I don't know what the name of our mayonnaise is that she's getting, but I'll say this too. My wife would be like, that bread is way worse than the mayonnaise on that sub that we're eating. She'd be like, oh, that bread.
Yeah,
So
that's
I have to
another.
have
That's
special hero bread. Our hero bread costs us almost like $8 a freaking loaf, and it has a shorter lifespan because it
yes.
doesn't have any of the preservatives in it.
Yep.
So I like to
Yep.
have like a PBJ or a type of sandwich, but I have to plan ahead of time because the loaf will go bad. I can't wait till we get an urge. I have to.
Yeah, we buy, or at least I've had, the only bread that I've had lately is bread from the bakery of the grocery store. So I don't know if they put a bunch of stuff in it. I'm assuming they don't nearly have as much like preservatives as like your Wonder Breads or your Piggly Wigglies and all that, which is something I grew up on. I grew up on because my folks had to save money because of financial hardships and everything. Sure. So we had to, and like most families. I mean, I visited a few friends in this YouTube sphere that have families and all that, and they have to save as much money as they can. So they have to buy like the cheaper stuff at the grocery store, or in this case the commissary, because military, they're army and all that. So my friend Judd Roberts, so I made it's just like I'm just so not used to eating that type of stuff anymore. So that's I think that's kind of helped contribute to why I feel like I'm going to be 40 in 2 months, and I don't. What's weird is I'm starting to feel some of the age kick in. That's why I'm trying to get back into exercising before it's too late. But I don't feel like I'm 40 years old. I feel like I'm 30. I feel better than I did 10 years ago. So
the kid inside of us all. That's so good. But listen, no, you're doing the right thing. You got to get ahead of yourself, and folks out there that are listening or watch this, you just have to kind of be strategic, like what works for you. There is a labor of love taking care of your body. You're it. There's no, what I mean.
Your health is your wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
you don't
more
have
important.
That, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Quality of life. And I mean, I had to see my dad's health degenerate. I mean, he was a good looking guy. I mean, part of the reason why I'm bald is because he was bald, but he was a really handsome guy. I mean, that's not my mom. And he used to play baseball quite a bit. He was overweight when he was a kid, but then he lost the weight playing baseball, and he also lost the weight because his family and his family smoked, and he started smoking at 16. This was the early 70s, So, and he smoked for several years. He smoked 2 packs a day, and then he inherited his father's golf club business, and that went under the tubes. So he had a lot. By the time I was 10, when all this stuff went down, he went through an insane amount of stress, and he got sick after that. He started getting rheumatoid arthritis. He started getting autoimmune diseases. And I'm curious, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about this. I mean, I don't know how politically you want to speak, but with RFK Jr. talking about autoimmune diseases and all that stuff, and trying to figure out a way to prevent that. And I think it's from the food that my dad ate. And obviously the smoking didn't help either. So I've been trying to. Yeah. I've never smoked because of that. My brother unfortunately smokes right now, but I've never gotten into smoking because of that. And I want to try and better my health by based on what I eat, and trying to still exercise and try to keep myself free of the stress that he went through. And that's part of the reason why I've been hesitant to start a family myself, because even my situation, my job situation has been kind of unstable, because I'm in the engineering field. The engineering field can be pretty tough especially they want you to learn stuff really, really quickly. And if you have no experience with that type of industry, it takes time to learn everything, because they put on the engineer, they put a lot of stress and effort. Everybody's asking the engineer questions. So if you've ever seen the movie Office Space, and they're like, what do you do? Yeah. Engineer does pretty much everything. And then you have the person working with the engineers like, I don't really do anything. The engineer does all the work. I just take the thing from the engineer to the other person and all that. But yeah, it's and that's the thing. But I consider myself blessed because I'm working now. I'm working in Aurora. I'm working for a company that's willing to, answer questions and train and all that. And I've been thinking about getting back into the dating game myself. So yeah.
Well, I tell you, smoking is probably the biggest area that I've been a fraud in my life. I actually have never smoked a cigarette. I don't even know that I really took a full drag off of one, even as a kid. Never smoked pot and pretended to do so to avoid peer pressure. Like I would just like, yeah,
Yeah.
man. And then I would say like things like, oh, it makes me sick, man. And there were a couple of reasons. One, I saw other people just do things. I saw the sickness, like you said, people that smoked. I had a lot of chain smokers in my family, cancer because of it. And it was pretty early. I want to say elementary or middle school where they did like the black lung scare thing back then. They'd bring
I remember
babies,
that.
and it was like, yeah, I don't need. And as an
That
athlete,
scared me too.
I played basketball, played a lot of sports when I was really young. And my grandfather was always like, taking care of your body, taking care of your health. If you do these kinds of things, they're going to be bad for your health.
Yeah.
And I would say it was the early 80s. There was a basketball player named Lynn Bias who died, and there was like allegations of drugs and all sort of stuff. And I'm like, I never touched anything after that. I was like, oh, this is enough. It just stacked 2 or 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
So even later, when people were smoking pot, oh, don't you want to? I'm like, oh, no, man, it makes me sick. Whatever. I just lie, and I feel bad for lying, and I should have just said, no, man, I think it's a crap for you. I should have just been a jerk back to them, but
Yeah.
it was just the environment of that era. But I have no regrets. Because now my allergies are so bad, I can't imagine how much compounded they'd be if I had also had years of, inhaling all those intoxicants for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much the same. Like I mean, I don't think I didn't have the friends to get people I didn't have the friends or people didn't like me or talk to me enough to get me to peer pressure me into stuff. So I consider myself blessed for that. But the other thing is like, I actually tried an edible for the first time at the very young age of 37. So I actually felt a little bit of a high for the first time in my life a few years ago. My friend had them, especially after they legalized it here in Illinois. And I'll be honest, I got a very good night's sleep, and that's pretty much it. But other than that, I think it's overrated. I think it's overrated. I don't think it's necessary. I consider myself blessed that I know a lot of people have issues with addiction, especially when it comes to alcohol, drugs, smoking, and all that. I think my brother, unfortunately, has some of that, inherited some of that from my dad. Because I've been trying to get him to quit smoking, and he hasn't been, my younger brother, and he hasn't been able to do so yet. And all of his friends smoke, and so I'm assuming because of his friends and all that, and because of stress and all that. So I don't know. It's but I've never. The only time I ever smoked, I smoked a cigar with my friend last New Year's, and I don't even think I'm not even sure I never smoked a thing in my life. I'm not even sure I did it correctly. But I didn't inhale it, so I guess I did it correctly. So I don't know. But even that, I were like, oh, we love the taste of a cigar, and I was just like, I don't know. It hasn't really. I'm not impressed. I don't know. Like the thing about me is, when people say, oh, this is good, or you like this, or everything, I'm always very skeptical because a lot of times I just don't find myself agreeing with a lot of things. Like when it comes to like shows, for instance, like I remember everybody was talking about Breaking Bad. Like, this is a great show ever. And one thing I always tried not to do was go along with the crowd, or agree with the crowd or the mob or whatever, because I was always like I said, I was always bullied, the brunt of jokes, or the brunt of being humiliated and all that. And I never wanted to be a part of that. I never wanted to be part of this, of a mob agreeing with people, and especially now. That's why when you have your people like the dog pile, on social media, and especially people who will consider themselves, self-righteous fans of a certain science fiction franchise I'm extremely fond of. I don't like people like that. I look at actions instead of words. Well, I look at words, but I also look at actions and how they behave and all that. And I never really wanted to be a part of that. So one thing I had learned is that I kind of had to back off from that idea, because I finally watched Breaking Bad years later, because I had nothing to do. I binge watched. I wanted to watch some shows, and I was wrong. I was like, what? Sometimes, maybe it's okay to listen to people. Maybe the majority sometimes are correct in their. Maybe I can agree with the majority So
I haven't done a review on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, so maybe we should talk about that a minute. Because I with you, I never watched it. I didn't really have an aversion to watching it. It was always just hailed as being so great, and then I think it was, and it was really one of the dips we've had in the last couple of years where it just seemed like everything sucked,
yeah.
and maybe it was also where some of the stuff, the volume of stuff had kind of been lessened because of the strike and the pandemic and stuff like that as well. So I binged it all, and I came away with too with like I really did enjoy Breaking Bad for the most part.
Hmm.
I will say I think I won't say they took steps back, but I didn't enjoy it as much when the character when Walter was he was enjoying it as much. Like when he was really embraced it, I enjoyed it more when it was like he was trying to get away from it. Like he was still trying to lead an honest life or steal away his portion and be done, whatever. Once it become like enjoying being drug. Now I will say they redeemed itself at the end where he starts to admit, I do like being a drug lord. Like I actually get off on this. Like he admits that he's evolved into that character.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like it was sort of that Godfather journey feeling. Like, it's like, I don't want to be a part of this. I have to be part of this. Now I am part of this. I kind of like doing this. It was kind of, it was
Kind of like,
rewarding. I really enjoyed it.
it's funny because instead that was the one thing that they didn't. They actually showed Scarface. They showed him. He's watching Scarface with his son. They're like, "Oh, wait for it. Say hello to my little friend and everything." So I kind of was thinking maybe it's more of a Scarface type of thing. But then again, Tony Montana was always a criminal, whereas Michael Corleone, started off as a good man who didn't want to be part of that type of life, and then he gets kind of pulled in as I guess you could say as a foil to the whole chosen one. Instead of being the chosen hero, he's the chosen villain, I guess you could say. I don't know.
I don't think that show gets credit because it does something like Indiana Jones reframed the concept of like the fallible hero, right? This journey, this hero type story arc that kind of really changed with Raiders. And I think when you have now made a term break bad, like a legit term in our lexicon, that's something special that we don't give credit for. Because people will just make that conversation waiting for so-and-so to break bad, or they did break bad, or like, oh, it's like the legit smart person or whatever. And they just like, oh, yeah, they'll do crime. They'll just do it for the cash. I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I thought that was I actually really enjoyed that. I really liked that dynamic between Bryan Cranston. I like Bryan Cranston, stellar acting. Same with Aaron Paul, and then of course adding characters like Bob Odenkirk's Saul Goodman and Jonathan Banks as Mike Ehrmantraut. I thought, and of course Giancarlo Esposito's extremely scary Gus Fring. I thought was especially season 4 was like, to me, was the season 3 and 4 were the pinnacle of Breaking Bad. Season 5, I liked how season 5 focused more on Walter. Basically, he peaks in the middle of in the very middle of season 5, but then it all comes crumbling down when his brother-in-law, and this is something I'm sure fans have been waiting for since the very beginning, was his brother-in-law figuring out that he is Heisenberg and all that. And I like how, like, especially how he's on the toilet at their house, and he finds out by reading back to reading the book, the book that he got from that one cook, the
meth lab cook. Yeah, gave it to him as a gift. It was like one
little
detail he didn't think of purging out of the house, right? So he just wanted some random detail he never thought of the book would be like led back to him like that. Oh, it's brilliant.
You got me. WW, is that Walt Whitman? Walter White? You got me. And what's funny, I thought that was brilliant. And then they go back to it, he figures it out. I thought it was just, and then the rest of the series was just ridiculous after that. So, and yeah, the Ozymandias episode, the episode with where certain characters die and things change, things totally change, and there's no going back, was, believe it or not, Ryan Johnson directed episode. He directed that one. He directed the episode with The Fly. So people were excited for The Last Jedi. I was talking a little bit about this with Price yesterday. People were, I was actually kind of excited for Last Jedi. Because of the fact that Ryan Johnson did those episodes of Breaking Bad. But then The Last Jedi comes out. He not only directed it, but he wrote it as well. And he wrote it in just a way that just alienated everybody, unless you were somehow a self-assumed auteur of bad cinema or something. You think you're this artiste. You know, you think you're taking art to the next level, but you're actually just making it worse. You're making the product that it comes from, or the brand that it comes from, less valuable because of that. Because of your self-perceived auteur vision or something, which is not auteur. He just thinks he's auteur.
Yeah, I think it's even more malicious than that. And I go back to that being the pivot point, not really just because of the Last Jedi stuff, but because this is the point where...
So it's not just ego? You think there's more
I think it's worse than that, because this is the point where the studio let him say, we're going to completely redo the canon and the direction away from the Skywalkers in a way that will also humiliate them. And I don't know that the humiliate part was on purpose as much as they just didn't care. There was no...
I don't think
there was no sort of like regard, because they'd already done what they did to Han Solo and Force Awakens, which was, in hindsight, is aged it's unwatchable now. Like, I can't even sit through Force Awakens again now. And I think that Rian Johnson, they somehow massaged the ego enough for him and given him this permission to do this stuff, and they all thought it was good. I think since then, that's been the direction of that studio and the direction of a lot of Hollywood. It started way before that, of course. I think we can go back to J.J. Abrams, and we can go back to Trek. I think that's
Star Trek.
I had never done.
To
give that, because it really is a pivot point of we can rewrite and steal that stuff from there forward.
You brought up something in This Side of Paradise video that I think would be relevant, because this is something this is how early I noticed that the whole Spock and Uhura thing that started back in 2009, where she's just like, she goes up to Spock and she's like, I'm not assigned to the Enterprise. Well, because you're not. Well, you're assigned to the Enterprise. Okay, you're assigned to the Enterprise. And then they have their cringy love. They have their cringy scene where he's crying and all that. I'm just like, what is this? And then I mentioned this in the comments. I'm sure you read them. Into Darkness took that to another level. They're going on an away mission, and they're in a very dangerous situation. They're on the Klingon homeworld, and they're being attacked. And they're doing this while Spock and Uhura, Spock and Uhura are bickering. And Pines Kirk is literally like, are we really doing this? And then she shushes him while he's in command. Shatner's Kirk would never have done that. Nimoy's Spock would never have done it. I can't imagine Sweet Nichelle Nichols as Uhura being that insufferable.
No, she had to be brainwashed with the spores in that episode to even talk back to him and sabotage the computer the way she would never have done that. And I think the reason that, and it's funny because watching the original series the way I have, because I hated my issue with 2009 Trek was the time travel cheat stuff. Like, it was just a cheating thing. You're just basically just cheating. But I was like, all right, I'm still in it to try a little bit more. Then of course they cheated and tried to redo Khan, and they lied to everyone saying it wasn't Khan. Then I
to this day don't buy that it was Khan. That was John Harrison. The whole Khan thing. I think the whole Khan thing was terrible. What they could have done is they could have kept him as one of, Khan. There's 56 other people.
Yeah, there's other people. Yeah.
You could have had someone else. Could have made one of the other characters, and not be Khan, because there's only one Khan, and that's Ricardo Montalban. And you can't. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch I think he's a good actor. I think I liked him in Smaug in The Hobbit. And I mean, he's been in a whole bunch.
Like anything that Cumberbatch, he's not the problem. It's sort of a Tom Cruise rule, right? Like, Tom Cruise is usually not the problem with a Tom Cruise movie. Cumberbatch is usually not the problem with a Cumberbatch movie. Like, he's usually not the problem.
He's not.
Script, it's the execution. He's bringing the best he can with what he had. It's the fact that all of that is the precursor to how bad everything gets. And I think in hindsight, I hadn't moved that timeline back to 2009. I'd started it more like with Force Awakens and some other stuff around 2015 and 2016. And I need to include that Trek stuff, because now having this mirror opposite of original series episodes where you're like holding a mirror. Okay, well, we literally had to brainwash characters with a spore to make them act a certain way. You were making them act that way. So now we have, like, I mean, I don't know what alternate universe that Abrams put things in, but it's the same thing I put in with like the Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, where they have all those stupid cameos. I'm like, that's the short bus dummy universe. It's in that same kind of. It's like it's in this universe where none of this makes. It's so stupid and retarded. It's that kind of thing. It's like it's in another universe. It's just a universe that's so dumb and retarded.
That's how I feel about New Trek. Basically, it's separated from everything else. I don't care what anybody says. Like you call this Star Trek, it's not Star Trek. It's just something else. It's another science fiction universe.
Theater. Yeah,
and that's not even worthy. It's not even worthy to be called science fiction, because science fiction is full of very profound and very interesting ideas and thought provoking ideas that make the reader think. Star Trek used to make the reader think, or not the reader, make the viewer think. It didn't tell you what to think, as heel versus babyface puts it. So, and he's right. TNG didn't do it. TNG, like new shows now just don't do it. New shows just don't do it. They don't make you think. Even old, and I was talking about this with Price. Even old sitcoms made me think. All in the Family. I learned quite a bit, not only about 70s, but I learned about politics and the divide between Democrats, especially between the right and the left, from that show. And the thing was, even that show, I mean, you look back at it now. I mean, sometimes, even though Archie Bunker, who represents the right, was kind of made to look like a buffoon most of the time, because or the writer, the creator of the show was Norman Lear. Norman Lear is staunch, is a staunch liberal Jewish leftist from New York. But the thing is, the fans still loved Archie Bunker, because he was written in a way that still made him human, that made him still made him relatable. And there were points where he kind of, he steals your heart in certain really well written scenes. But it also made you think. Like, you didn't always agree with the meathead. You always didn't agree with Rob Reiner, who, I'll be honest, is literally still a meathead. He's an example of, age does not necessarily mean wisdom. Just because you age doesn't mean you get wiser as you age and all that. That's at least that's how I feel. So, like, he's still literally dead from the neck up, as Archie Bunker always put it.
Couldn't agree more about that sort of like hippie know-it-all mentality, which is so common today with this.
And there were episodes of All in the Family that addressed that, where even like there was a point where he just kept putting Archie down, when he wasn't present, to a point where even Edith had to step in and say, no, like, dude, you gotta look at yourself. You're not, you have to look at yourself in the mirror, man. And that was it. And then, eventually, he understands. And what's funny is Archie walks back in the house, and he just I understand Archie, because he learns quite a bit more about Archie's situation, why he is the way he is. And he hugs him, and Archie's just like, what the hell are you? He's like, get off me.
What is wrong with you? Stop touching me.
What's wrong? Yeah. Dude. Yeah.
I didn't even keep it, but I have to give credit to Ben Shapiro's book called Primetime Propaganda, which is a book he wrote. I think he was still in college, like 16 or 17 years old. He went undercover, basically, because no one knew who he was yet.
Yeah.
And I think he put on like his is it Harvard hat or whatever, and he started interviewing all these people. He kind of outed that agenda that was very prevalent during those sitcoms and shows, and how they were very aware, and they put all that messaging in there on purpose. And I think what's interesting is how poor the writing is now when they're trying to accomplish something very similar. And I want to go back to that too, because I've been rewatching Fantasy Island. I know it is exactly tied into what we've been talking about. Went from Ricardo Montalban, how much I love Ricardo Montalban. I'd watched Planet of the Apes, I had Ricardo Montalban, and I was like, I should watch some Fantasy Island. And my wife and I watched the pilot episode, which is like an hour and a half movie, 2-hour movie, very dark, kind of downer, not what we remembered. I started watching the second movie, which came out a few months later, and it was better, not quite right. Things just didn't quite feel right. And I've been watching a couple episodes, and one episode that struck me was the subplot, because there's two, and once it got to being the regular TV show, there were 2 plots instead of 3, and one of them is called Salem, and it's basically like the moral right-wing conservative Republican type of the 70s. And they kind of want to live in that world. They're sick of seeing all the moral decay, whatever. And those are the comments of how it's presented. So the fantasy, he's putting them in like Salem, Massachusetts. And I'm like, okay, hold on. That's a pretty extreme response to what is deemed as the more. So what I bring that up because I feel like I love your thoughts that it seems like the left wing or the far left political response sometimes to moral and that type of thing, which Archie was trying to represent, and I think a lot of people try to communicate, is like Handmaid's Tale. It's like this so extreme amoral
Yes.
Christianity or Judeo-Christian, and I'm like, okay, hold on. I mean, I know that that has happened. I'm not trying to take away that those things didn't exist, but I don't think that the church that I'm in and that kind of world where I live, that any of us think that if we have a political position, let's say anti-abortion, or we have whatever, that means we want to have Handmaid's Tale or we want to have Salem Night. That is such a
No.
bizarre, extreme perspective, but that
Yeah.
is how they think of things, and that I think is interesting of note as we're talking about this, because it's my world's how they kind of navigate.
Yeah,
like
and that's had me concerned about, like, like with, I mean, well, New Trek I completely wrote off, but I watched, I don't know if you've seen the new season of the Orville. There was an episode where they go to the Krill homeworld. The Krill are supposed to represent the religious right.
Yep.
And they go to the planet and they find out, I'm not even sure this needed to be in the episode, but they put it in anyways. They find out that when parents do that type of thing, and end the pregnancy and all that, they punish them by forcing them to confront a holographic version of what their child would have been. And the child's like, why did you do this? And I liked how Seth MacFarlane, and when I say like, I'm being sarcastic, I liked how Seth MacFarlane's like, you want to live in a world like this? I'm like, what's wrong with that? That's called accountability for your actions. I mean, these things don't just happen randomly. They happen because of what you did, what two people did together, and all that. So, and you decide, you didn't take the precautions. You didn't do the means to, if you didn't want it, you didn't do, then put in the work to prevent it. And now you will just want to do something like this. And I'm just, it was one that a lot of people, and I had, because I did the after show, we were talking about it, and it pissed a lot of people off. But what's weird is it's one of those cases where they try to make a point. The creator tries to make a point, but the opposite point ends up flourishing instead. So like it actually made their point. It did the opposite thing. And that's why shows now, like, they write it a certain way, but then
that happens. Actually, I feel that way a lot with Orville 3.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big one that made me, is like, that was one episode that really, because that was also the one where it was commenting on the whole, like, populism is dangerous to civilization, to the future, being on populism is basically on the wrong side of history. Well, I mean, history is written by the victor, as much as, that's quite said, but it was just something that I was just like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting older, and like, the whole allegory thing is maybe I'm getting more like Tolkien. Maybe Tolkien was right, and like, allegory, when you get to a certain point, an age where you just can't seem to, escape it, it just is not interesting. That's why he didn't like it and everything. So
that one felt that in season 3, there were several moments where I felt like they were too on the nose with what they were going for. They'd done it so well up until that point, but in season 3, there were 2 or 3 episodes. The gender changing thing, I think, was a little too on the nose as well. I mean, again, I'm not trying to argue. I'm just trying to say I think they just got down. They were so on the nose with what they were trying to go for and say, and the judgment from the main characters and the cast. Oh, this is when they would react with disgust. It was like they were showing too many of their cards rather than having conversation and debate.
One thing that was unacceptable. One thing that was unacceptable about those particular episodes was that it disregarded the parent, because there's two parents. There's two parents that are fighting. There was Bortus, and then there was Clyden. Now Clyden's the more conservative, I guess you could say, traditional one, who wanted to follow, the customs of their people. It's not a good custom, but the thing was that Clyden's basically, I don't know, Clyden was basically the mother, and Clyden was against it. But then they're like, oh, you don't need to both parents' permission. And I thought that was, in my opinion, I thought that was unacceptable. I thought that was unacceptable. And they did. And then there was another episode where the daughter was involved, with that freedom fighter woman from the same, species, the Mocklins. And I forgot her name, but she's the one that learned from, she learned from Dolly Parton and was playing, was reciting the 9 to 5 song in the council. She ended up turning into a real true creeper. Like literally the G word that a lot of people like to say online now. Yeah. And she's like, "Don't tell your parents I want you to do this for me." I was just like,
yeah.
And I lost total total respect for that particular character. And that character, of course, wasn't punished for what they did for getting the child, putting the child in danger, and then doing that creepy stuff. And then the rest of the season played out, and it was I mean, it wasn't bad. I know a lot of people liked it, but it was just, I was so dissatisfied with it on an emotional level. I was dissatisfied with what they did. I was expecting like a Deep Space Nine type of awesome thing, and they resolved the big conflict with the Klingon, the artificial beings. The artificial, like they were supposed to be the Borg, like they were supposed to be the existential threat to everything. And they just completely undid that in a single episode. And so apparently an existential threat is better for our future than people who have ideological differences. And that was the takeaway from that season. I was just like, I don't care if they make another one. And I still don't. Like they, Scott Grimes came out and said, we're making a season 4, even though there was no official announcement from Hulu, Disney, or even Seth MacFarlane himself. And I don't care. I do want to have this conversation though with PJ, Orville Nation. I don't know if you know him. He's another great channel. I've been on his channel. He's a great guy. I want to actually have him on for Nerdporeal. I actually want to talk about Orville. I want to hear his thoughts and everything. But he had the producer. The producer just showed up on his stream and he invited him on. I forget, it was one of the guys that created 24. I forget his name.
It's definitely got a big fandom, and I am surprised to see it end the way it did. I felt like it just totally took the wind out of my sails. There was sort of a live and let live adventure feel all the way through season 1 and into 2. I think there was a massive fall off in 2.
I thought 2 was great. I thought 2 was awesome.
I think there was a couple episodes in 2 that lost me a little bit of the caliber as the first season, but season 3 kind of went. I felt season 3 was like a product of all the problems. I felt like it was not them totally placating or virtue signaling, but I felt like it was pieces of it. And I think it goes back, like we said earlier, with we can't pretend that this is in a bottle when I can point to a Fantasy Island episode in 1978 that has the same sort of like hands-made tale mentality of what this conservative right-wing person would want. I didn't do a video. I thought about doing a video, but I don't exactly even know how to put together a concept to wrap it around, because I was just like, it was just, I was very off shot. I was just knocking my heel. I still to this day, I'm kind of, 'cause I've watched a couple episodes since then. Most episodes are not really hard punching. A lot of them are just kind of like TV filler, not as much fun as I kind of remember. But that one really kind of struck me as odd. Like, okay, all right. So
I got a question. Who Fantasy Island's another show I want to add to my list of classics. I saw a scene on YouTube that I thought was awesome. Like it was a greatly acted scene. It was Ricardo Montalban's character. What's his name? Mr. Mr. Rourke. Mr. Rourke is facing off the devil himself, and the devil himself is played by Roddy McDowall. And I thought that was an epic. That was an epic, one-on-one talk and everything. And I'm just curious who created Fantasy Island, because I'm curious. Was it like another heavy, like you said, because of the heavy-handed ideas of what the left has versus what the right does or something, or what the right believes in. I'm just curious if the rest of the show is like that, or if it's actually tries to be fair and tries to just to give you food for thought and everything.
Most of the episodes, I haven't watched. That one of the most famous episodes is the Mr. Rourke versus Satan sort of episode for sure. I don't know. Gene Levitt is the creator. I don't really know if Gene is sort of outed as being particularly agenda driven or not. I feel like the show mostly is about food for thought, or be careful what you ask for. There are some nice, like the one of the early episodes is Radar from MASH. The guy that plays Radar from MASH, his name is escaping me.
Gary Berghoff.
Gary
I would
Berghoff
know
wants
that.
to be. He wants to be a baseball player. Wants to have success against some of the best hitters in the game. And they have a little fantasy game, and he strikes out the side. It's really zany. They like have the ball going loop de loop to strike out George Brett and whatever. And then that's the fantasy, right? But he's so arrogant. Because they've said, oh, you can come out, you could try out for the actual team, whatever. So he talks back to his real boss, but his real boss needed a talking back to. So when things don't go as planned, he's actually made his real life better by actually having some confidence and boost of confidence. So some things like that, I think, were actually done very, very well. And the morality, I think, is just good for humanity, good stuff. There's just, but I think it's one of those things where, as I've been rewatching it, it's not as fun as I thought it was. It's more of a heavier drama than I thought it was. I remember because there's a lot of jokes. Every episode has a couple of jabs back and forth between Mr. Rourke and Tattoo, which is the little, the midget that's
Nick Nack from Man with the Golden Gun. I recognized him right away.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of gags that Tattoo's always up to something. He's trying to run a scam, or he's trying to grow a mustache to get ladies, or there's just something. There's always something, and it seems like my memory hole has pieces of memories and things, but being honest, an honest rewatch. But I got to be honest, folks, if you want to rewatch, a lot of them are on YouTube. You can just watch, people have uploaded them. I don't know how this copyright stuff's out there. There are whole channels now who have mass amounts of retro TV that is not a public domain. So I don't totally know how that works. But yeah, it's out there for sure.
I have a question to ask you. They made a movie of Fantasy Island, and it was a Blumhouse, and they made it into a horror movie.
I could see.
Have they done horror elements in Fantasy Island in the show?
I mean, psychological horror, right? More like thriller type horror would make sense. Like I can see.
So like Haunting of Hill House type horror, basically.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I could think there could be angles. I'm not watching the movie. I don't think I can watch the movie. We were talking about this briefly when we did our I Love Lucy and Lucille Ball tribute, and Daryl brought that up. He also brought up the fact that they did like a Love Boat reboot they tried to do. I'm not watching that either. There's something sweet and perfect with my 70s nostalgia that I don't want to mess with. I don't have enough faith in the creators that they can do it in a way that I will enjoy. So
I remember I Love Lucy being on, like, now I wasn't alive in the 50s, but I remember I Love Lucy. I think the first time I ever saw I Love Lucy, I think I was 5 or 6. And I think they were celebrating its 50th anniversary 40th anniversary in 91. And I remember it was on all day. My mom and my grandmother were big fans of it. And I watched, I don't know if I watched every episode, but I watched like the first couple seasons, like all the way through. And it's that show, like, I mean, there's a reason why TV was a thing and why the sitcom became a thing. And because of the brilliance of I Love Lucy, like that show was funny. Like everybody, like, there was a great episode. I'll never forget this one. There was this was like 1951, 1952. Lucy and Ethel want to be treated equally. They want to be treated equally, or like with to their husbands. Like, we're equal, we have right, we can vote, we're equal and all that. Oh, and they're like, oh, you are you? So they go out for dinner, and Fred and Ricky leave them without paying their bill. He's like, you want to be treated like a man? Here you go. You got to pay for yourself. And they're like,
pay the bill.
Oh, we forgot. We forgot our money. And they're like, tough. And they leave. And the what do you call the maitre d' of the restaurant is like, you have to pay. Well, we don't have the money. Well, okay, we're going to put you to work. So they go.
It's the you got to do dishes cliche from back in the day. They'd have that cliche that was you do dishes to pay your bill thing.
I don't remember how the rest of the episode happened, but they made them stew in that for a few hours and all that. I thought that was funny. I thought that was brilliant. And then of course you had the episode with the chocolate factory. You know, if you miss one of these, you get fired or something. Miswrapping one of these, you get fired. And so the conveyor belt gets out of control, and they're going quicker than they can do, and they start putting them all in their mouths. You know,
that was clothes. They're everywhere. It's insane.
Yeah, there was and then there was another one where the moral of the story from Ricky is never do business with friends or something like that. I mean, well, it depends on the integrity of the friendship. You know, if there's trust, you know, I think it could work out. But the whole idea was like, you know, they sold them a bad TV or something.
Yep.
And then Fred comes in and just kicks and bashes their TV. And I remember saying that, like, whoa. And then they go to court, and then the judge is like, come on, you guys are friends, be friends. I was like, okay, judge wouldn't actually do that. Or maybe the judge would do it just to get rid of them, just get them to, hey, make up and stop wasting my time and everything. But that was when I remembered, of course, the one that everybody talks about, the one where Lucy does a TV commercial, and she gets drunk off of the product that she was trying to Vita Made of Vegemin. It's so tasty too.
Yeah,
this stuff. And then she completely interrupts Ricky's number, because I think it was in the same studio. She had like nothing to do, so he puts her there. I thought that was a brilliant episode. It was so funny. This goes to show you how great, how good Desi and Lucy were. And I mean, they put all that together. They ran that. They ran that show. And they
ended up taking over the studio, right? They had having their own studio. He was running the studio, and eventually was getting fatigued. She took over the studio. That led to the era where she's green lighting TVs like Mission Impossible and Star Trek and such. So it's a lady we don't give credit to.
They needed a show, and she saw the potential in the cage. So originally she's like, she didn't even understand what science fiction was. She gets something for Star Trek, and she thought it was a show about about movie stars. She didn't know, or she thought it was about movie stars. She didn't know it was about, you know, science fiction and all that. And so the cage, they made the cage, and then the cage was obviously rejected. But Lucy said this show has some potential. Gene Roddenberry has potential to make something really good, and we actually, you know, we need the work. And you know, this is Lucy. Like she's the reason why that there's a TV industry in the first place. So of course they're going to listen to her. Her words have some weight, and so they made the second pilot, and then after that the show Star Trek got greenlit and everything. So they had them. And then Mission Impossible being done too. Mission Impossible is another great series. Like it's the original, the first couple seasons with Martin Landau as Roland Hand, the Master of Disguise and all that. Brilliant stuff. Like it's like I loved it. I loved how those episodes were structured. So you get the mission right away from the recording, and of course the recording always self-destructs in 5 seconds. And then of course the leader in the first season was Mr. Briggs, Stephen Hill's character, and he has files on all the specialists that he's worked with in the past, or people that could that would add to this operation. So he puts the thing up, and then they have like a little meeting where they kind of talk a little bit. They don't really go into detail about their plan. The whole point of that is just to give you an idea of some of the issues that might come up, and then they have that discussion. But then the rest of the episode is actually seeing what they planned, because you don't know what they planned until you actually see it. See them enact it, and it's just awesome. Like it's all about either discrediting bad politicians or destroying like weapons that could be in danger to humanity. There was one time they actually had to kill a character, and the one character that they had to kill was Ricardo Montalban. Ricardo Montalban had weapon. He had this weapon, and he had all the knowledge of it in his head, and he didn't tell anyone else about it. So their mission was to destroy the weapon and kill him, basically. And so they did it. That was the only time that they ever killed a character, because usually they don't. They usually discredit a character, and then they get the hell out of there. And it's awesome. It's just awesome.
I haven't watched MI in so long. I don't even have a frame of reference anymore.
I didn't even know they made an 80s series. Like like Star Trek: The Next Generation. They also revived Mission Impossible in the late 80s. They brought back Peter Graves as Mr. Phelps. Same actors that says, you ever see a grown man naked, Timmy or Jimmy or what?
Yeah, Timmy. Yeah, Spartacus.
You ever been to a Turkish prison? You ever been to a Turkish prison?
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, my friend, we talked about all sorts of fun stuff. We got our hour in, that kind of thing. I know you kind of already asked it, but let's close with some questions from you, man.
Sure. I mean, what do you? I do have a question. I saw your latest upload. What's it called? What was it called? Elfquest. So is this like a comic?
Yeah.
It looks very Legend of Zelda, and I grew up on Legend of Zelda, so that's kind of what caught my eye. I'm curious what kind of story or comic it is. I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, I think that if you go down that rabbit hole, for people that are really into that, elf type fantasy, a lot of folks that know a lot about Lord of the Rings would be into this. They're releasing a colorized version. A lot of the comics,
We lost you. Maybe I got lost. Excuse me.
Okay, froze up there for a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we lost you for like a few seconds.
All right.
So that's going to go on the chopping. That's going to go on the chopping block.
Yeah, that'll be chopped out. It's a husband and wife team. It's a great fantasy work there with all the different creatures and things like that. So definitely that Lord of the Rings type feel, this world building that gets really big. But these comics hadn't done it.
Is it like dungeons? Color. Is it like sword and sorcery, dungeon crawling type of stuff?
A little bit, yeah. Okay. Definitely more woodland creature-y than that. That's like a thing with the wolves. I think people would enjoy that type of stuff as well. AJ would enjoy this, by the way. I'm going to talk to AJ soon. I'm going to make sure to throw this way too. But yeah, it was kind of a nice little thing to see.
Abomination, AJ? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I would definitely, I think that a lot of folks have really got into like the hardback versions where they reprint them all rather than chasing down the single issues and things like that. So they may be doing an animated series, and maybe it'll get some legs. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm curious. Are you gonna try and finish the original series? You're gonna try and get every episode reviewed and all that?
I might take some time off after I finish season 1, but I don't know how much time between the end of the year I'll have. If it's like 6 or 8 weeks, that might be enough time to just jump right back in and keep going with season 2. I would say that I got a lot of pressure from folks trying to get me to do Stargate as well, because I started watching Stargate because we did the movie. I watched the 2-part pilot. I've watched a couple episodes. I actually am enjoying that as well. I don't know that I want to do episodic reviews of everything, so it's just like it's a lot of overwhelming with time constraints.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to doing it. I may just take some time off from it. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying reliving it and trying to do 2 things. Trying to, one, see it through their eyes in the 1960s, and then trying to give an honest sort of like first reaction of seeing it again. And it's only a couple episodes I really remember vividly, but it's been a good experience. And I'm glad you've helped me kind of nudge me through that a little bit at times, for sure.
It's always fun to watch other people reacting, getting their takes on it, because it kind of makes me reevaluate my takes, because there's a lot. I mean, I am extremely forgiving a lot of the flaws of the original series. So it's cool to hear stuff, and I'm one of those type of people that will if I hear something that's negative, I instead of being dismissive or getting mad at somebody for being toxic and all that, I want to learn more about why they feel that way, and see if there's any, and I'll make the decision without being mean to the other person, whether or not I agree or not. So
well, I might get hate as well, because I'm getting ready to drop so it's a review of it's a pretty famous Western called Veracruz. It has Burt Lancaster and Gary Cooper in it. And I made the mistake of watching the trailer because I wasn't quite sure which Westerns to kind of consider on this long list of things that I was going to consider we're watching. And the trailer kind of ruined the movie for me, because the pitch was like this big, never seen before masterpiece and action and all this stuff. And it was basically the whole movie. I have to be honest. It was like they spoiled the whole movie for me by watching the trailer. It's my fault. Shouldn't have watched the trailer. But I think people are going to be mad that I don't just love this movie as much as its legacy, because it's considered one of those, not John Wayne great Westerns. And it's fine. Yeah. It's okay. I just don't see myself going through all the downtime in between these sequences, because there's these massive event moments in this film, and it was filmed on location. So part of the pitch is it's filmed in Mexico. It's filmed on location, which is cool. It is cool, but it doesn't mean it holds up. It's not this great Western. You did a thing on The Searchers. Searchers is way better than this movie. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah. I've been kind of going down that Western rabbit hole myself. I've been rewatching. I rewatched like the Dollars trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and they're all awesome. Like just the Ennio Morricone music, it just makes those movies worth it. Like you never thought a duo was as cool as you see, especially in For a Few Dollars More, and the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Just like I've re-listened to like the dual theme from The Good, the Bad, the Ugly several times during my lunch walks when I'm at work and all that, and it never gets old. It never gets old.
It's probably. Well, I'll say this. I'll get it because we're short on time. We have to wrap. But I would say it's arguably the best trilogy in Insane. Each movie kind of one-ups the other one. It's pretty rare. Like the second one's better than the first one. The third one's better. It's like so. It may be the only trilogy that kind of does that and kind of has that sort of scale. And he was able to accomplish that because he was leveling up his success. And then, of course, simultaneous to that, he was getting success in the U.S. when this stuff was landing in ours. So it was almost happening simultaneously. So, the Dollars trilogy, and I'm having a harder time because I've always put Good and Bad and the Ugly in my sort of like my trifecta of with Unforgiven, and then I kind of put Tombstone in that same list because Tombstone is so freaking rewatchable. Tombstone has a lot more flaws, I think, in its story and the romance subplot, whatever, but those three movies are the three pinnacles of Westerns. I don't really even, they can just be 1A, 1B, 1C. I don't really care. But the trilogy for Good and Bad, the Dollar trilogy may be the best of the trilogies for that reason. I guess we can make arguments for other trilogies, but that's why I like that one.
It's not even really a trilogy. They're three separate movies.
Really.
They're not the same characters. Clint Eastwood plays different characters in each one. And it's brilliant thematically. It gets bigger and better. The scope just gets bigger to the point. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is just this insane epic. Like it takes place, during the Civil War. So they're doing a lot of traveling. It's almost like a fantasy adventure in a way. They're looking for the treasure. They're looking for the gold in the cemetery. And then you have the big bad, Lee Van Cleef, and Lee Van Cleef is terrifying and one of the best scenes in cinema, which has been recreated. It got recreated in Tarantino's movie, especially Inglourious Bastards with Hans Landa, and it got recreated in I don't know if you've seen the Fallout series, but the scene where Walton Goggins is in the house and he's eating their food and all that and demanding. I forget what he's demanding, but that was taken straight from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, one thing that Sergio Leone, in my opinion, might be the greatest director of all time. Like he knows how to time everything perfectly, how to build tension. Like I think he's even better than Kubrick at that. I think Kubrick. I don't think Kubrick is nearly. I don't think Kubrick has the directing chops even that Sergio Leone had. I don't think Sergio Leone gets enough credit.
He definitely doesn't get enough credit. He's definitely one of the more underrated. I don't know that he has a long enough resume to justify the kind of conversation that you're putting him into, but I wouldn't be opposed to having it if I looked at more of his other films too and see. So
yeah, I mean, just watch Once Upon a Time in America, and they'll just like, you thought The Godfather was the pinnacle of gangster movies. Watch that one, and you're just like, whoa, what is this? And
that's great. I remember that movie so vividly. It was good.
Yeah, it shows you, it gives you a more realistic look at being a gangster in New York and everything, and it kind of paved the way for like all the Scorsese films after that, where you're just you're literally a piece of crap. Like it's not this noble character that becomes bad, because of circumstances. No, you are always a piece of crap because you're doing bad things to people, it's for your own profit, and you don't care. Like they literally, there was a scene in that movie where they switched a baby because they wanted to blackmail this cop, this captain of the police who was supporting this union and everything. So they switched he had a son and they switched him and everything. It was so messed up. It was such a messed up scene. So there's
a lot of messed up elements in those mafia films too. And there's so much rooted stuff that never makes it to cinema. I've always thought about, I don't know that I have it in me as far as the years to write more, but I would love to kind of dive more into some of those true stories and bring them to light, because some of those stories are just so freaking shocking. It's insane this was happening. But well, brother, thank you so much for hanging out with me. We talked about all sorts of crazy stuff. It's been a great time.
I feel like a sequel is necessary.
I
There's
think
so
we
much more to
definitely
talk
need.
about.
Yes, it's What's Your Story Part 2. The Nerdporeal continues for sure. So, well, brother, thanks for everything, folks. All the stuff's in the description. Of course, make sure you are connected to this guy, checking out the stuff that he's doing. He's amazing at all of this, and such a great friend in this journey as well. So, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be blessed. Until next time, I'm Pops.